for next year. It is now, under the National Expenditure Program, it's 31 billion pesos.
And what was the reason for the increase?
There are, no, definition. There are projects that needs yet still to be funded, because when we look at the definition of the fund, prior, paano nga nila sinabi? Ayun. Ito po. The reconstruction, rehabilitation, repair, and relief of other works or services, including pre-disaster or in connection with the occurrence of natural or human-induced calamities, epidemics, as declared by the DOH, crisis resulting from armed conflicts, insurgency, terrorism, and other catastrophes occurring in the current year or 2 preceding years. So meron pa pong, I think, for approval na list of projects as referred by the OCD to the executive, Madam Chair. And then the NDRRM fund also is a source of the QRF, of the different frontline departments and agencies. Meaning, you will see po in the proposed budget that agencies like DPWH, DSWD, DepEd, they have QRF fund which they can use pag magkaroon po ng kalamidad. Pero pag nabawasan na po ito ng 50%, they can actually request for an additional fund po for the QRF at ibabawas po siya doon sa NDRRMF fund po. Magiging source din po siya, Madam Chair.
But Madam Chair, Secretary Amenah, aside from the QRF and other programs responding to flooding, is there any budget provided for disaster preparedness other than flood control?
If you will notice po doon sa binasa ko, yung 2 years po na nakalagay doon, those that already happened ng mas matagal na po, can already be included in the budget of the agencies, in their level. And then, if necessary po, while this is not identified, assuming it's really necessary, we can pwede rin po natin kuhanin sa pag kinakailangan po sa pwede sa contingent fund ng ating Office of the President.
Saan po? Sorry.
Contingent fund po.
Continue. What about specific funding for master planning, drainage master plans done by perhaps a DPWH, if in fact it has it's its mandate to do that?
Magkano? There is an allocation of 1.48 billion pesos under the DPWH budget for master plan, Madam Chair.
1.48 billion pesos.
Tama?
Flood resilience and adaptation.
Yeah.
I just,
Ang tawag po nila ay Integrated Flood Resilience and Adaptation 1, Infra 1 project. It has 3 outputs. 1, improvement of strategic flood risk management planning through capacity building of national government units. Output 2, development of flood protection infrastructures. And 3, strengthening community-based flood risk management. Mainstreaming from the local development plans and capacity building. And I know that there's a lump sum also under the Department of Public Works and Highways in the preparation of feasibility studies of projects. So pwede rin po. Pero feasibility po yun in preparation of possible master plan for flood control, Madam Chair.
So how does this budget compare to the previous year's budget? Is that, does that represent an increase or decrease or of the previous year's budget, or the budget stay the same?
Ito yung sa feasibility study? Ano ba to?
Resilience or specific.
Pero mayroon.
For feasibility studies, nag-increase po siya if we compare it to the General Appropriations Act. Because the General Appropriations Act only provides for 1.7 billion pesos, and now the NEP has 19.457 billion pesos, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, but for the integrated master plan, the budget set aside for the integrated master plan, you mentioned that it was 1.4 billion. Was there a
Yes.
corresponding budget for the previous year?
Yes, it increased because in 2025 GAA, it's 1.12 billion pesos. A minimal increase, Madam Chair.
To your mind, so the 1.4 billion pesos allocated for the integrated master plan, do you think is enough to solve to address the flooding problem in the Philippines?
Admittedly, Madam Chair, I don't know po because I'm not an expert in that field. But maybe what I can share is that, like this morning, I was in Quezon City, and I would like to note that yung Quezon City government po, meron na po silang nagawang master plan for their flood control. So I suppose po the other local government units, at least in Quezon City, as also one. So maybe we can just have close coordination with them to be able to consolidate all this master plan, Madam Chair.
A question related to that. When you set the budget for this integrated master planning, is there any kind of coordination that happens between your department and the local and the DILG or the LGUs to see if there's any overlap in master planning?
Madam Chair, who proposes the budget, the level for that purpose.
Sila po?
Sila po. DPWH po.
Okay. To your knowledge, is there any kind of coordination that DPWH does with the LGU? Just asking.
I'm not aware. I cannot answer for DPWH, Madam Chair.
I guess the next question is for Secretary Balisacan or even Secretary Amenah. You agree, Mr. Secretary, that addressing the flood problem is essential to our development as a nation? Itong problema natin sa baha ay hadlang po sa ating development bilang isang bansa.
Definitely, flood control, floods have high cost to society.
Opo.
And because first, it displaces people apart from casualties, and this destroys assets, and these are very painful, very costly for low-income groups because this when they lose their assets, then they basically fall into what we call poverty traps, and recovering from that is extremely difficult, especially for a country like us, where social protection is not that well developed, insurance is not well developed, and so it's a very costly, and that's why for whatever limited resources we have for flood control, they must be used wisely, diligently, and efficiently. We believe that, Madam Chair, that those flood control projects are useful, and there are so many of those projects that are needed to protect people from destruction. But we just need to improve the way we do flood controls.
Earlier, there was mention of a national framework for land use. Do you think having a national framework for flood resilience or flood mitigation would help?
I do believe so, Madam Chair. For example, just even in looking at how and where we locate residences, for example, we just look at the Sierra Madre, for example. You would see so many subdivisions constructed on a watershed, which should not have been allowed, because those watersheds, when you destroy those watersheds, you create a lot of problems downstream, and where the siltation problems that Marikina River or Pasig River, it's part of the destruction that is done upstream. So the flood control, the way we see it at DevDev, Madam Chair, it should be seen as an ecosystem. When you build a dike or when you build a canal, you look at the entire system, so that river basin approach, so that flood control would meet the usefulness that it's intended to.
Tingin niyo ba if we capacitate the LGUs to actually protect our natural barriers, as you mentioned, the wetlands, the mangroves, the riverbanks, and also empowering them to actually protect legal defenses such as easements, do you think that would help?
Definitely, Madam Chair.
And in terms of having a national framework, do you feel that integrating flood-related data and also enhancing its interoperability, for example, data from Pag-asa on weather forecasts, data from NEDA on water data, data from DPWH on the flow of water and water level, the data from NDRMMC, the data from DPWH on the infrastructure data, having a sort of like a centralized data would help in master planning and a better execution of the integrated master planning that was mentioned earlier.
Before the Secretary would answer, Rep. Roman, please wind up. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I think the flood control projects should be science-based, should be data-based, should be evidence-based, to ensure that those projects will be effective, efficient, and least costly to government.
Okay. The last question, because I'm winding down or winding up. How does the budget protect small farmers and fisher folk? Let me rephrase. Looking at the present budget and the programs for farmers and fisher folks, how would you break down the budgets? How much is spent for farmers versus how much is spent on fisher folk?
Rep. Roman, was your question directed to Secretary
Secretary
Pangandaman?
Amenah, sorry.
Okay. Can you repeat the question?
we